peppers July 1st. With the Malabar spinach, which has started to climb. This trellis. And here's the other one too. Over there on that side. And I'm going to make a third one here for this Malabar spinach. Going to make it go up all the way around. And the same on this side. Now we've got 3 Malabar spinaches. Going to make a tunnel as we enter the garden. And alongside the spinach, the chipiche is doing really well. It looked like just a few blades of grass when we transplanted the spinach. Got a couple of peanuts too I found in the garage from my peanuts last year. I hadn't kept any seeds because my peanuts did so well last year that I had all sorts of ground cherries that grew all over top of them, and the peanuts fed them, and the ground cherries grew really well, and I ended up not getting any peanuts. Didn't find any though, but it looks like I forgot about 2 peanut seeds last year, left them in the garage. They were in there all winter, found them this spring, and I planted them, and here they are. So we're gonna be able to start our peanuts again this year. The chipiche is doing really well. And I'm happy with how the peppers are doing. Beautiful July 1st morning. Over there, our main potato patch. Now I can't tell the difference between the first ones I put in and the last ones I put in. They're all the same size. Funny how that is. The later ones just end up catching up to the earlier ones, and they all end up having a similar maximum size. Seems to, oh, I see, there's a little space in here because there must have been some little animal coming here. Investigate what's going on, but they're doing good. And now these plants had a lot more flowers a few days ago. I see some pretty pink flowers here. We're going to get some. These flowers eventually give a fruit that is not edible, but you can collect the seeds and grow your potato from seed, which is an interesting experience. Got lots of potato bugs here, but the birds are always in the garden. They're generally not in here when I'm in here. Sometimes they are. If I'm quiet, I'm not moving too much, then I'll see birds. Otherwise they come to all these trellises, hang out on the trellises, perch. Even on these little ones, they perch and they eat the bugs. So all those potato bugs you just saw, well, I'm just gonna leave them there. Birds will eat them. Here are our 3 sisters on July 1st. Squash is starting to expand. I've covered up some of the vine there. Now I can let the potatoes grow finally. Don't have to keep treating them like they were weeds. These things, some of them are taller than me now. And the beans are up high too. This is nice and far along for July 1st. Happy with this, especially because it's right in the heart of the garden. And the heart of the garden is right here. This is the very center of the circle. There's sorghum and corn right here in the middle, with the beans and the squash. Plants get this big and are doing this well, I like it because then I can let all the other plants that grow just, take up the leftover space. Got some plantain there, Got the creeping Charlie, a bunch of, what is this, oxalis, dandelion. Here is some curly dock that's going to seed. So you can see how that looks. Such an important plant, along with the plantain for helping with bee stings, mosquito bites, and so on. Tons of wild lettuce. Got a Manitoba maple growing here. I'm gonna have to take that out. More Three Sisters here doing well. Here on this hog panel, side by side, we've got here on the left, Luffa. In the middle, Birdhouse Gourd, and on the right, beans. The beans and the Birdhouse Gourd are from homegrown seeds. The Birdhouse Gourd, I was lucky because I didn't get that many viable seeds. Out of, I think it was 36 I planted, I got 8 or 9 plants. So I was lucky. The Birdhouse gourd mustn't have been very ripe when I had to harvest it because of the frost. But it managed to ripen up a quarter of its seeds, maybe, from that one test. Here growing up the panel, and some more beans and some more over there. Here are the tomatoes that I have surrounded with so many different companion plants. Calendula, carrots, lettuce in between the rows of tomatoes, and broomcorn sorghum. The tomatoes are doing well certainly for July 1st. There are a few little tomatoes forming. I'll see if I can find one for you. Here's one, which is pretty good for here for July 1st. The plants aren't as let's say as bushy as I'm used to. I usually grow heirloom tomatoes, and they're always really, really bushy. However, this year I'm doing an experiment. I'm not sure I'm going to stick to it though for next year, because last year I didn't companion plant my tomatoes. I didn't follow my very own sort of way of doing things, because I'd never had problems with tomatoes, and so I always intensely planted them all in one small area and put tons of plants in. Well, 90% of our tomatoes got wiped out last year from the blight. But like I said, I didn't do this with them. I didn't companion plant them. It was just tomatoes. And like I said, 90% of them got wiped out. The only tomatoes that didn't get wiped out were tomatoes that were in other gardens, isolated and surrounded with all sorts of other plants. Like there was one surrounded with basil, chipiche, and carrots, I think. And it did really well. So I collected those seeds. They're not growing here, they're growing elsewhere. But here in the main garden, not in the same spot as the tomatoes from last year, in a different spot. So this is a double experiment. I'm growing these tomatoes, but these are also, for the first time in my life, I bought hybrid seeds. Hybrids that are supposed to resist the blight. But not a big fan, because you can't collect seeds from hybrid. Well, apparently that's what they say, because they're not going to keep those properties. And they were expensive. Like a pack of seeds was $7 with taxes, like $8 or so. And there was like 7 or 8 seeds in the packets. That's $1 a seed. That's like incredible. So if you have a few that don't germinate, you're getting close to $2 per seed. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. However, like I said, I had some tomatoes that resisted the blight, even in the main garden here, and I collected those seeds and I planted them, and we'll see what happens. And there are a couple of heirlooms here. There are heirlooms that resist also resist the blight. So we're going to see how they do. And I also have tomatoes inside the greenhouse because they say that you cover them if they're protected, because apparently the blight moves over the continent. So I guess it comes down with the rain. I guess the fungus, it's airborne. So we'll see. We're going to see how the different all the different tests do this year. But you know, I get so many wonderful comments from everyone, and if anyone has anything to say about the blight, any advice to give, I'm all ears. And you'll be sharing it with everybody else too. But last year, the tomatoes that had the blight, well, they were over here, where these three sisters are. In fact, I didn't bother taking down all the trellises. All these trellises here, not the teepees in the middle, but these, I guess these ones here, two vertical ones and one horizontal ones. Those were for all the tomatoes. So all this was full of tomatoes, and all this was full of tomatoes. Or I think there were about 90 plants, and I can't remember. It was either 50 or 90, but they were wiped out. They were wiped out by the beginning of August, the 1st of August, or the 1st or 2nd of August, and so then I just put the onions in instead. Now my calendula has now overrun the asparagus, but I'm not going to worry about it. Asparagus will be fine. I'll just make sure I give it enough space next year. That often happens. My companion plants overrun my regular ones, but I love the calendula, so I'm just going to let it stay. As long as the asparagus regrows next spring, I'll be good, and I'll make sure I give it so much more space. This Dino kale is so pretty, I don't want to harvest it. I have to start harvesting it. I don't want it to go to seed before I harvest it. Although I'm at least one I'm going to let go to seed. Now here, the cabbage and the cauliflower is completely covered up the basil, but that's fine, because now we're getting into the real hot days of the summer, so the basil will just bide its time, I hope anyway, and until I've started harvesting some of this cabbage and cauliflower, and then the basil can start growing again. But I'll harvest it bit by bit. It's just going to probably get a little leggy, which is just fine, as long as it doesn't go to flower. As usual, I tried to put 18 inches or 45 centimeters between each plant, but I think maybe I cheated a little and they look like they're a bit close together. That's my perennial problem. Oh well, next year I'm just gonna have to discipline myself and plant a few fewer. Well, we'll see. We'll see how these do. They just look beautiful anyway. Oh, I'm gonna go get in close to those three sisters, because I want to show you some of those beautiful red stems. Even though the basil's covered up by the cabbage and cauliflower, in this area, our watermelon area, the basil's got its own sort of area. It's in the shade right now, but that's just in the early morning. Eventually it's in full sun most of the day. Watermelon's doing good, mixed up with some pepper and that okra in the back, which is starting to grow. Eventually it's going to be nice and big and beautiful and give some beautiful flowers. And it's in the hibiscus family, and how the flowers look just like hibiscus flowers. They're beautiful. Now let's look at these three sister stems. Of course, they're the regular green ones, but it's these red ones that I really like. They're just beautiful. And the husks of the cobs are going to be the same color. I harvested so much rhubarb, but I suppose I could harvest some more. But I think I harvested enough that we got enough rhubarb sauce for the whole winter. Maybe I'll harvest some more though. But I know one thing I'm going to harvest soon, it's these seeds. As soon as I see them starting to drop, that's when I'm going to harvest a whole bunch of them and experiment with them. I've never planted rhubarb from seed before, but I'd like to see how it does. Rain garden over there is doing really well. I'm going to be able to harvest a whole bunch of basket willow branches, either for propagating or making baskets with. And over here, I'd like to show you how our living fence, planted by the animals, by the birds, how this living fence is going to feed us and keep us healthy in the winter. Look at all these grapes starting to form. It's full of grapes. I'm not a grape grower, but we always beets. The beets mixed in with the cabbage. As you can see, the cabbage is able to push through the beets and take up the space it needs. And the beets are going to be okay under there. The sorghum is just starting to get underway here. What I love about the beets, they're all the different shades of red and green of the leaves. Now the peppers, as you can see, those peppers that I put in amongst the beets are still very small, but that's okay. So they're not crowding out the beets whatsoever. And I'm going to be eventually starting to harvest those beets, and then the peppers will be able to have more space. I'm going to have to start thinning out some of these beets, harvesting some of them. Onion area over here. Well, we have lots of onion areas, but this is the area where we have so many of them. They're doing well. So much better than I expected when I transplanted them. They just seem so flimsy, but I'm really happy with them right now. You're doing good, you little onions. The carrots, this little patch of direct sown carrots that I thinned out last week. Just starting now to get standing up again. And this is now a really wild area of the garden.